I'm Theresa Bruno with the Soul Talks podcast. I'm here today with Shaun Pru. He is the host of a hit podcast on SiriusXM's Canada Talks, the Shaun Pru podcast. He is a thought generator, I like to call it. He has sparked what he calls a thought revolution, where he encourages us not to just have conversations, but to have conversations that explore our personal growth, our mental resilience, our authentic lives, if you will. And he comes from a really interesting background that is kind of unexpected for a media star. He dropped out of high school, immediately kind of got on this financial career place where he exploded and was in a six-figure salary really quickly, and then in the most unexpected way left it to pursue what he's doing now. So can't wait to share with you Shaun's life and the good that he's doing in the world. But I have to say, the reason I wanted to have Shaun on the show today is that the last time I talked with him, he was interviewing me. And I expected, because I've seen his show and I've listened to him and all of his press, I expected this really irreverent, great sense of humor, and I'm not funny, so I was like kind of worried about that guy to come on, and I thought, how's my story going to play here? And I have to say, bar none, I was met on the other side with the most compassionate, the most empathetic interviewer I've ever encountered. So Shaun, I just, I walked away from that time that we talked that day, and I told several people about it afterwards. I was like, I feel covered in sparkle dust. Like, you just completely settled and saw me, and then you went down this path. You immediately gave me some of yourself, and you talked about being a teenage boy and your father dying and your mother having to step in and start to work and raise four boys. I mean, you immediately gave me something really vulnerable of yourself. It was just a beautiful interview. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me on, and thanks for such a great introduction. I'm glad you enjoyed the interview. I felt a responsibility to handle your story with care. It's a tragic story, and I know anyone who's experienced what you experienced is always going to be in some stage of grief. And so I wanted to make sure that I was not triggering too much of that, that you're my guest in my house almost, and I just wanted to make sure that you were treated properly. And so I'm glad that you felt so nicely about it. Thank you.
I really did. I was just awed by, how much you gave me. And that speaks
thanks.
to, I think, what you are doing. I wanted to start a little bit. I would love it if you'd talk a little bit about being a teenage boy and dropping out of high school and the whys behind that started to, form your life.
Well, I grew up in the 80s as an 80s brat, and I grew up in rural Ontario in Canada, and on a 150-acre farm outside of a very small town. So no neighbors, and having lots of kids who, back in the 80s, you can only imagine how they reacted to a gay boy. I had Duran Duran hair and shoulder pads, and
I love it.
I went to the city and bought my clothes at this store that's no longer called the Chateau, but it was all this kind of edgy kind of clothing back then, and so they're walking around in their baseball shirts, and here I'm coming in pretending I'm Joan Collins from Dynasty.
Oh my God.
With my big hair. And so it was a rough ride in terms of the other kids in school, and my school was a violent school.
Oh gosh.
And so it was rough that way, and I'd get off the school bus every day with a half-mile driveway to walk down to get to my house, and the kids would be throwing things at me. They'd be spitting at me they'd lower the windows, spit things down on me, tell me they hoped I died of AIDS.
Oh my gosh.
That kind of thing on the daily. And I'm not alone in that. There are kids still suffering from bullying as we speak, obviously. That's just an ongoing thing. But that happened to me. And then I would get home and wait for the hour in which my father arrived home, and he was an alcoholic. And he was quite a brutal alcoholic, I would say. He had a Jekyll and Hyde personality when he didn't drink. He was a wonderful man, very soft, very gentleman. And when he did drink, it got nasty. So there was always this kind of what's going to happen when Dad gets home. And so my dad died when I was 17 of esophageal cancer. He was sick for about a year. And when he did pass, and I say this, and a lot of people can understand it, even though they may not have acknowledged it to themselves, I was relieved. We had a very volatile relationship. We didn't see eye to eye on anything. I was a very mouthy teenager, very bratty teenager. And I witnessed a lot with my dad and my mom. I'm the oldest, and I saw some terrible things happen, and I had terrible things happen to me. And so when it was all over and he'd been sick for a year and it was in and out of the hospital, in and out of treatment, in and out of the hospital, in and out of treatment, it was exhausting. When he passed, I felt a sense of relief. It was acute. And a friend of mine, a family friend, would once tell me, 5 years later, when your dad died, it was like watching a butterfly emerge from a cocoon.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's painful. I mean, I'm struggling here to just
You
think
know
of
what,
that young boy
Theresa,
and all of
this
that.
is what I know. This is what I know for sure is that the people that have the roughest starts end up doing the most interesting things and becoming the most interesting people when they're older. And I was taught resilience. I was taught tenacity. I was taught resourcefulness. I was taught many things through the experience of living with my dad and in the situation I was in. And that those things, you can't buy those things, that resourcefulness, the tenacity, the strength. I developed those things, and they have served me so well. They served me well when I quit school and went on to do what I was doing in finance. They serve me well today. And so those are blessings out of that experience that I appreciate. And the good news is many years ago, this is going to sound kooky, but I had a spiritual reconciliation with my father.
I was feeling that as you were talking. I could feel, even though you said you were relieved, that you had forgiveness.
I was listening to some stuff about the idea of death and dying, and do we keep our personalities? And this woman who was talking was explaining that when we die, she thinks that when we die, we keep our personality, and that we are everywhere in the lives of the people that love us. And she said, like, when her husband died, they were running a multi-million-dollar business. When her husband died, she had to find someone to replace him, and she couldn't find anybody. So he was very, very good at this. And so she decided to try her hand at it, and she discovered she was very, very good at it. And she discovered when she picked up the phone, whoever she needed to talk to was receptive. When she turned the corner, she would rendezvous with just the person she's wanting to meet. Things unfolded for her. My dad was creative as well. He was a writer as well, a very gifted writer. And my career, I've often noticed, has been similar to his.
Sure.
And so when I was listening to these ideas about what happens when we die, and this woman trying to find her husband's footing and take over the business, what she wanted to say was that was her husband flowing through her the entire time.
Yeah.
Giving her the cue to pick up the phone, giving her the inspiration to turn that corner, not that corner. And I realized when I heard this, and I was on a plane, and I was seated between two massive guys who were both sleeping, and I just burst into tears because I realized that I have done well in my career because I'm a high school dropout. I am not college or university educated. And so who am I to have a radio show? Who am I to have been published in all of Canada's major papers and had a column and had a TV show? Who am I to have done all of this stuff? And I realized from listening to that woman that my dad has been flowing through me this whole time and giving me the love that he couldn't give to me in the physical and guiding me step by step by step throughout this career that I've had. And so I'm on this plane and I burst into tears and I felt this rush of like gold liquid love go through me. It was pure as anything I've ever felt. And I, in that instant, forgave my father for everything, let go of everything between my dad and I. And I have, as I say now, had this reconciliation with my dad. And now I talk to him all the time. If I've got a problem, I'm like, help me out with this.
No, I'm the same with my late husband, James. It didn't take that long, but, I definitely have always believed that spirits live on beyond the body and that
Yes,
I never really explored it before because I wasn't driven to, but that we have communication with those who go
we
on.
do.
And so I began very early talking to James because I didn't know how to handle everything he left me with. I have 2 young boys who aren't men yet, and so still today, I talked to him just a few minutes before we came on and said, guide me, help us both have a voice in the world that, will serve people today. But I talk to him all the time, and I feel like there are many times I would have made one move, especially with the boys. I feel his guidance going, no, they're not girls. They're young men. Do
Yeah.
this, or picking us up. I feel like I kind of get notices from him when something's going on with the boys, especially that I might not know, and then I'm clued in. So yeah, I'm in the same place for different reasons, but
Even small things like I'll get myself into some crazy harebrained situation, or something will happen to me that is funny, and I can feel my father's laughter. I can almost picture him in my mind's eye, and it's such a pure feeling. It's not something I'm searching for or seeking. It just is suddenly there. So I would encourage anyone who's ever lost somebody to reach out to them because they're there.
gosh,
I know
that is
that
such
100%.
a beautiful story. And I think we all know that when we hold on to unforgiveness, it's us who's getting eaten up. It's
Yes.
not the person on the other side, and it is very debilitating to our abilities to move forward positively.
It was so bad that if I went to therapy, or if when I was in relationships, we might have gone to some couples counseling, and they always ask about your family and stuff like that. I could never talk about my dad without bursting into tears. Like, I had so much built up pain about my dad that the subject matter alone, I couldn't get through it. I couldn't speak. And so that's how much I let go of when I grasped onto the idea that my dad's been here the whole time, guiding my career, guiding me.
I mean, I suddenly have 1,000 questions for you. And first of all, I just want to applaud you that you are emotionally and mentally flexible enough and open enough to take something like that in, because many people might have been presented with that woman's story and wouldn't have known how to fully take that golden light in and let it spread around and do its work. And I assume you made a pretty big pivot in your life from there forward.
Oh yeah, it was like 1,000 pounds on my shoulders were lifted. It was like everything that had ever happened between my dad and I never happened. And so the pivot that I would have made was just the releasing of all of that and going forward with this idea that my dad's with me all the time, and he's proud of me and guiding me and cheering me on. I don't want to get verklempt. By my
Go back to something you just said, because, in reading about you and preparing to talk today, something that really resonated for me, and I didn't know the story of that long walk home every day and the abuse that you got for being, a young man coming out. But you are such an empathetic person, and you do give so much understanding, regardless of who's on the other side of the mic from you. Do you feel like being gay and suffering all kinds of bullying and abuse expanded your empathy as opposed to your anger?
Without doubt. It's the same way that living with my dad taught me lots of things, like I talked about resilience and resourcefulness and tenacity. Being gay, you go through, especially in the 1980s, when there was no internet, there was no understanding. We didn't have gay characters on television. There weren't helplines. There was a very lonely time for all gay people. You have things happen to you, and empathy is the ability to use your imagination to put yourself into the shoes of someone else.
Right.
And when you have had experiences like I had, like a lot of gay people have, then you do have that ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And to, when you came on my show, I empathize with you because I've known the pain of losing a major figure in my life, and you lost yours. And so I just felt for you. It was not hard to be empathetic
It was
at all.
extraordinary. You know, it was a million hugs through the screen kind of
Uh,
thing, you know, but it was so genuine. You didn't take it too far. It wasn't sappy. You just held it. You held the pain.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That fast forwards me to a number of things I wanted to talk to you about. You know, I really love your concept of thought revolution and what you've done with that in the style that you interview, and your own 6-month journey that you made extremely public on your show, your transformation. I wanted to ask what was stirring in your mind when you started going, okay, I've got this show and I'm having these talks with people, but I want more. Like, where did that all come from?
Well, I grew to understand that, we have 60,000 thoughts a day, and that those are the only things we can control in life. You can't control anything around you other than the thoughts you think. And I'm not standing here saying that I'm perfect in my thoughts. I'm a bugger and a bastard and get sarcastic and get angry and get pissy and that sort of thing. But for the majority of time, I look for the things that make me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I look for the things that make me feel happy. And in your solar plexus, and we've all got a GPS in our stomachs that tells us whether we're thinking the right thoughts or not, because we feel off or we feel tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and excited, and feel hope and optimism and love. And if we're thinking thoughts that are contrary to that, we're feeling negative, we're feeling depressed, we're feeling angry, we're feeling mad, we're feeling frustrated. And so if you pay attention to how you feel, you're thinking thoughts that serve you or don't serve you. And I try to catch myself when I'm having thoughts that don't serve me, and reframing them or refocusing my thoughts to something that serves me better.
Mm-hmm.
And the result is that because our thoughts have vibration to them,
Mm-hmm.
we attract like things into our experience. And my mother was very much a practitioner of this idea when I was a little boy. She was always mind over matter to me. And so from an early age, I've had this understanding that it's really what you think about that creates the experience you're going to have.
That's right.
And I'm not saying that I have lots of experiences that are challenges and that I don't like, but I have drawn into my world a lot of wonderful things.
Right.
And I credit that to thinking the thoughts that I think.
Wow.
And believing in them and believing in myself.
100%.
I had an office at one point. Now it's a spare bedroom, but the one wall was a vision board. And I put everything on there that I desired, including one of my biggest career goals, which was to interview Oprah Winfrey.
And you did it.
And I did. And I did.
Amazing.
On the show, I guess that was probably like 8 years ago now, but I did it.
And Tony Robbins.
And Tony Robbins, yeah. Tony Robbins was not so hard to get, but Oprah's a hard.
Or I don't even know how you could make that happen. But to the nexus of that is, 100% agree. Our thoughts, create our internal values, and it creates how we live out life.
Yes.
It's just, and it's so easy to talk about and sometimes difficult to harness. But I think if we could all get a hold of, the thoughts that we're thinking, the words that we say, becomes the life we live.
That we live. I mean, it's not as hard as people make it out to be. 15 minutes of meditation a day will put you in sort of a nice place where, you change. You start thinking positive thoughts on a subject and start going on a bit of a rampage, and you hold those thoughts for 17 seconds. You now have a new set point of attraction in your life. It doesn't take much. 17 seconds of just going, I love this, I love that, I like this, I like that, look at that, look at this, look at that. And you can change everything for yourself. Or just journaling down. I mean, I write down almost every day 5 things that I'm appreciating.
2.
And that's a focus for a minute or 2, whereas I write. That changes everything.
Yeah.
And it sounds airy-fairy, but that vision board on my wall was just there. As I worked, I'm staring at the things that I desire, and that has a lot of power. And science has told us that we're much more than flesh, blood, and bones sitting in our chairs and being who we are. We're vibration mostly.
Yeah.
And vibration attracts vibration. And you can either believe that or you don't have to, but that's the way it
100%
works.
agree. I told you, years before all the tragedy struck my life, I had spent a lot of time in LA, and, LA was just way ahead of the curve in spiritual thinking, manifesting abundance, thoughts create your life. And I had, read Louise Hay's teachings, and I was kind of getting into Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza and those kinds of thoughts, certainly Marianne Williamson. And I had put all of that into my being, but I can't say that I was really living it in a daily way. And then when James took his life, I couldn't figure out the first way to turn the faucet to positive. And so I told you, I started remembering those teachings of Louise Hay, and just got sticky notes, and I put them on where I put my makeup every day. And it's, I am courageous today. I have confidence today. And I would put one in my wallet, and I put one by the gear shift. And those 3 places, and just the simplest, I have courage today. Before James took his life and before I lost the business courage was not a problem. I lived my life pretty fearlessly. The minute those things happened, all that courage and resilience I'd built in business and in life evaporated for a while. And those positive affirmations, those thoughts began to seep in and help me live that way. It was really powerful for me.
There's a Louise Hay quote. It goes, all is well in my world. Everything is working out for me as good. Out of this experience, only good will come, and I'm safe. And I say that probably 5 times a day.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to go write that one down.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And the ending is the best. I am safe.
I am safe.
When you remind yourself I'm safe. And so every time something comes up that's got me cranky or losing my temper or fearful or worryful, I say that.
So it's easy for me to see, but I would love for our listeners to hear how you got there. It's easy for me to see, given how you are thinking, how thoughtful you are, how you have gone down this path, why you would not approach an interview as just an interview, but spark this thought revolution concept.
Well, I think everyone's got a story. I'm curious about everybody. And it's a deeper dive when you get to talk about how were you at the beginning of this story and what made you that at the end of the story. I think that's the most interesting part of any interview. Today I'm taping my show later on today, and we're doing Pride Month shows, and there were 4 lesbians 50 years ago in Toronto who went to a bar, and they got up on stage and they changed the words from a Rodgers and Hammerstein lyric from I love being a woman to I love being a dyke. And 8 police officers arrived at the bar. They attacked these women. They beat these women. They arrested these women and let them out because they had nothing to charge them with, and said, don't go back to the bar. The women went back to the bar to get witnesses, and the police were there again. They grabbed them again. They beat them up, and they threw them in jail. And this went on. There was a court case about it, and they're known as the Brunswick Four. So I've got one of the surviving members coming on today. She's an older woman now. And how do you survive and thrive from an experience like that is the most interesting thing.
Next time, Shaun reveals his HIV journey and the incredible story of interviewing Oprah.